Hey everyone, and welcome to Leonora AstroTarot. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really am super happy that you are choosing to spend your time here with me. I know there's so much out there, so much for you to do to entertain yourself, particularly here on YouTube. But yeah, I really am glad that you are here, and all the likes, subscribes, comments, stuff like that really help grow my channel, which is still pretty new, still in the early stages. So yeah, I am thankful for you dropping by. But let's talk about today. So the reading today, I'm not quite sure yet what I'm going to call it, but I wanted to explore the idea of love karma or lessons in love. So we're going to be asking sort of what are your love lessons, or these kind of karmic lessons that you have to face in the realm of romantic relationships. If you found yourself caught in some particularly painful loops, we're going to be looking for information on that, perhaps the roots of that, and how you can move through these things and move forward to more positive experiences in the realm of romance, basically. So the lessons that perhaps you need to learn or have struggled to find insight and clarity in, that's what we want to know. So we have 4 groups today. Group 1 is the Pyrite, Group 2 is the Lapis Lazuli, Group 3 is the Amazonite, and Group 4 is the Peacock Ore. Just go with the group that's pulling you, you know. Usually your eye will ping in a particular direction. Of course, you are more than welcome to pick more than one group. There may well be different messages in different groups for you. Just go with your intuition. Okay, so I will leave you for a moment to pick your group, and I will see you in your reading. Bye. Hello, Paul 1. Thank you so much for joining me. You picked the Pyrite here. And today we're asking all about your romantic karma. So we're looking for insight into perhaps patterns, experiences that you have had, insights into what you can learn from these sort of patterns. Call it karma, whatever you want to, however you think of it is fine. We're looking for insight really in how to move forward positively and break old cycles if you found that you have been caught in a cycle, Pal 1. So yeah, obviously these are general readings, so take only what feels like it's meant for you. Leave the rest. So we have the 5 of Wands in reverse, we have feeling in reverse, and we have the Page of Coins here. We have the Wheel of Fortune. We have the Queen of Swords here. We have, I think this is the Knight of Swords. This is the Knight of Swords. This deck, this amazing deck, the Oculi, is kind of new to me, but also it doesn't say actually on the cards which is which. And I didn't go through them before shuffling, so I can't tell that way. But you know, it doesn't always matter. I read the energy of the card, so I'm going to read that as being the Knight of Swords. So we also have the 8 of Wands here. From the Tantric Dakini deck, I love this new deck, we have Asylum, we have the Mother. And from the mini Lenormand here, we have Anchor and Birds. Interesting. Okay, so we're asking about love karma, Pal 1. Let me just check this frame to see that I'm not cramming. I think you guys can see, right? I know I'm not. I was joking about I'm not so good at symmetry. If you want everything lined up perfectly, yeah, I think you can see everything, right? You can see everything. All right, Pile 1, the Pyrites. What lessons do you have to learn in love? This trip, this particular incarnation, if you believe in multiple lives, believe what you like to believe. Like, of course, you should always take these things with a grain of salt. Karma, of course, is a concept, the idea that sort of we carry things with us, right, between lives. It originates in the Eastern religions. It's not as simple as sort of reaping what you sow in an observable way in this life. It's about what we carry between lives, or at least that's the origin of the concept of karma, which comes from the East. So of course you don't have to believe in stuff like that. Believe what you believe, but yeah, the idea that we carry a kind of debt to pay off. So not some, but not all of our challenging life experiences may come from some kind of action taken in the past, right? So we have the Five of Wands in reverse. So pile one, certainly as you arrive at this reading, you may have, I mean, the Five of Wands is often a card of petty conflict, right? It doesn't necessarily, doesn't quite have the same violence as the Five of Swords does. The Five of Wands tends to be a little bit more playful, but it also can be very combative, very competitive energy. Either way, people are at odds and people are fighting for different things. You may, pile one, have had a lot of relationships, romantic relationships or romantic encounters that felt like they were filled with violence. Sorry, not with violence, with conflict. I don't mean real physical violence, although I said that did come out. So if that is the case, then I'm very sorry to hear that, and that's awful and should never be the case. There's no place for physical violence in any relationship. Yeah, but I had meant to say conflict. I said violence, I know, but I had meant to say conflict. So for you, pile one, those of you that pick this group, you may feel like it's not possible to have a romantic relationship without a large degree of conflict, and relationships in general. And maybe this hasn't always been the case, or it has felt this way recently, where you've just felt at battle with people in general. So I'm feeling for some of you, this may be a general feeling you're going through right now. For sure, certain romantic relationships have been filled with conflict, with feeling like you're at odds, like you're not, like there's been no harmony, essentially. And you may feel like that's the way relationships are. This is a misconception. Of course, conflict is unavoidable in life, but there are ways of handling conflict that are not about creating a constant battlefield. And I don't think healthy relationships look that way. You, pile one, may be struggling to figure out what a healthy relationship can and should look like because you haven't had positive templates. Perhaps your parents or your caregivers who did not model harmony as something in the domestic sphere. Either way, I do think this Five of Wands energy is fresh for you, pile one. Like perhaps you've recently gotten out of a relationship and it may have taken a lot out of you. You may feel exhausted. The fire here, it's just like, feels like carnage to me, but it also feels like about more than one thing. So it may also have to do with certain friendships or just people around you. Just it feels maybe has felt like a bit of a war zone. However, this card is in reverse, so it's telling me that you are moving away from this, you are rejecting this kind of energy, but you're left with questions about the degree of harmony that's possible. Is it possible to have harmony? Yes, it is the answer. Yes, it is. But you do have to achieve inner harmony first, right? That's always the catch, right? Yes, you can have harmonious relationships, but you do have to cultivate a harmonious relationship with yourself if you want to achieve that. There's a lot of tense energy that I'm feeling with the Five of Wands here. So I'm sorry if you've been facing a lot of strife. This feeling card in the Supra deck here we have in reverse. So I think for some of you there's blocked feelings, or you may have not felt safe one way or the other, because this is just like so conflict ridden at the top of the read. And we're asking about relationship patterns and relationship karma. So this may have been all you've ever known of relationships, or it may have been a more recent experience that has really affected you. But I do think a lot of you, pile ones, have felt afraid to really feel in relationship and to open yourself up in relationship for fear of being hurt and being vulnerable. And yet you've found yourself in some pretty it's like in avoiding, you know what I'm getting? It's like I feel like some of you perhaps have been very guarded of your emotions, your feelings, and truly opening up in love for fear of being hurt. And in avoiding one thing, you've gone in another direction, and it's led you to some very, very difficult, painful experiences in love. So you may have just like thought it would be easier to have someone that was more of a friend. I mean, there's red passion here, but I'm not getting passion as in sexual passion, but rather a kind of sparring debate. Like perhaps if there's a person in mind, somebody that you could sort of like back and forth with in a painful way, like rapport, but also debate, that may have been part of the passion in this connection. Again, it's not about just one thing though with the Five of Wands. There's other people involved. But yeah, back to this feeling card in reverse. It's like you perhaps haven't felt particularly tuned in with your emotions, and you felt maybe if you guarded your heart. Pole 1, if I'm telling this story and it seems like it's not you but someone you're connected to, that can also happen. It's just the cards will bring forth what you need to know, and you'll find your way to the right pile, right? So it may be someone that's connected to you or in your energy field, right? It's like in guarding your heart, you took what you felt would be a more safe path, but it ended up not being that at all. Or you've ended up having very combative relationships with people that, yeah, you may have superficially had some kind of fun connection with, or rapport or something like that. But there wasn't any deep connection, and you thought perhaps that would keep you safe, but it's endangered you in other ways. So maybe your heart hasn't been broken, but you have been crushed in other ways, right? So for some of you, I do think I was feeling this as fresh energy, and in some cases it may be energy that's still around you. But we have this incredible Page of Coins here in this amazing green field. Green is the color of the heart chakra. And I think some of you may have been dealing with a blocked heart chakra. So that part of your energetic body has not been flowing well. But that's changing. And I think it's changing because you've seen something about past patterns, or you're seeing things now about past patterns in terms of the kind of risks you're willing to take. You may feel almost unexpectedly that, hey, if you're going to get hurt, if you're going to lose everything, it might as well be worth it. Like, you might as well really open up in love. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, but at least you would have had that love. Whereas it just feels like in your past experience, you had all this drama and conflict, pain, strife, chaos. It just is absolutely chaos here, this Five of Wands card that I'm feeling in. But you didn't have love. You didn't have emotional nourishment. It's like, what was it all worth? You've been afraid of real feelings and real connections, and in doing so you've led yourself on a little bit astray. But this Page of Coins is beautiful, because like the page has its coin, right, and the coins or pentacles, of course. So when we see the Ace of Pentacles, it's like this beautiful new opportunity, a golden opportunity to kind of begin again. And this page is like grasping this coin. If you're not feeling this yet, Pile 1, I think you will be coming into this energy of being willing, convert, like strangely as it seems, because you've just been through so much and seen a real difficult side of how relationships can go so wrong. But you're still open, and you're open to love perhaps more than you ever have been before, because it's like you didn't follow love, or you didn't believe in love, you blocked your feelings. You didn't follow your heart in the past, but not following your heart didn't lead you anywhere safe or good or positive. And now you're really seeing the error of your ways, or I do think this is something that you're going to be coming into, Pole 1, and embracing this knowledge and also embracing new opportunities. But it's like this page is in this incredible green field of like newly felt emotions and richness and just like potential just prosperity and growth and all of this, and it's just like extremely beautiful. But I do feel like you had to go through this, and if some of you, perhaps you're still in it, or there's that you're trying to get away from it, for sure you're letting it go. I can see this is reversed. You're letting go of that, and it's not just people and particular relationships, but it's also beliefs, a belief that relationships are by nature just conflict filled and full of challenge, and there's this Page of Coins is in such a green and lush and tranquil place. I think you know that there is a different way. We have Asylum here, and this horse in this tree. Love this deck. It does speak to safety, right? Asylum, you're trying to reach a place of security and safety. This horse is sort of hiding out in this tree, right? It's like, are they after me? Is someone coming for me? You want so much to feel safe, and safe to open your heart, and safe to feel. I think you felt really unsafe in the emotional realm, and there may be different layers to this. It may be rooted, and it often is, of course, in childhood. Perhaps you weren't, like I said, perhaps there was chaos in the relationships of your parents or caregivers, something like that. You really have, and there's also this same green sort of meadow feel that I'm getting too. It's like, I think for some of you watching, you're at this place where you have reached this sense of almost a safe place to you, or you're getting there, or you will be there in the near future. And now you have this moment to breathe. I can literally feel the fresh air coming from these two cards. The Page of Coins and the Asylum card is just like, oh, I can breathe. Like, there's peace. I can just hear the birds. There's no like fires blazing and like, like bullets firing and all of this that was in the Five of Wands. Like, there's peace here. However, I'm drawn to the Wheel of Fortune that is following this Asylum card, and although the Wheel of Fortune usually, it speaks to fated movement, right, and cycles and progress, but there's something about the orange and the way this orange is corresponding with the Five of Wands, that it's like perhaps you have reached, or you're getting to this green field, this asylum. And I think as much as you're trying to recapture a belief, essentially a belief in love and the potential of relationships, I think there's a lot of fear. You may want to stay in this place. Maybe there's a part of you that wants to be single forever because you don't want to risk it, right? Why? Like, you can just sit here alone in a tree and listen to like the bird song and all of that. But I don't think you want to be alone forever. No. And with all this green, with all this emotional renewal and growth, then you're going to want to share that with someone. So I think you know that change has to happen and you want to move forward, but there's a lot of fear in this card that I'm feeling, because you've had to, the snake here, you've had to shed a lot of skin, you've had to regenerate, you've basically had to rebuild yourself after whatever this was, Pile 1, and start over. And that's not easy, and it was painful, and it was extremely challenging, I can tell. And yeah, some of you may still be in it. And there's just fears. Yeah, there's just a heavy fear of, is it possible? Is it possible? We have this Queen of Swords in this deck who is incredibly like violent. And I know I said the word violence earlier, and I do hope it's not the case. And know that there is help and support out there if that has been something that you've had to face. Like, it's never okay. And there is support and resources. I'm actually, you know what, I'll actually look for some links and I'll put them below if that is you. But this Queen of Swords is just, she's just sliced off this man's head. And of course, she doesn't have to be female, male or female, it really doesn't matter. It's an energy, right? Either way, we have one person that is being brutal to someone else. So this could have been, yes, psychological brutality, all of the ways people hurt each other in relationships. You don't need me to list them, but I do think Pearl ones, those of you that pick this Pearl, I think you get it, right? You get the ways that people mistreat each other, and I do feel that you are the one here that has been mistreated, and there is something incredibly karmic about this. I'm not suggesting that you yourself have been this way to others, but hey, who knows, past lives, there's something, it definitely feels like a debt that perhaps you had to pay off, Pile 1, as horrible as that may sound, and how it may feel very unjust and undeserved, because I do think, like, in the worst case scenarios here, there has been some kind of abuse. It feels quite heavy to me, in this card in particular. It's absolutely vicious. This Queen of Swords, is merciless. So if you've been on the receiving end of this kind of energy, it requires recovery. And so if you're feeling like you want to stay in this asylum stage, then I can't blame you. But don't stay there forever. Give yourself time, for sure. But there's something so beautiful about this, that in the process of whatever painful experiences you've been through, you have learnt something. Because I don't think that you were in love with whoever this energy was. This doesn't, no, I think you know that. And I think you know that you were blocked off emotionally, so you ended up in a situation that wasn't, it wasn't meant for you. It wasn't for your best interest, your highest good. It was just like you were sort of where, or it may feel this way to you, because I don't think we could ever be where we're not supposed to be, but it is as if you lost your way. And in avoiding opening up your heart and avoiding vulnerability, you ended up taking a path that led to so much suffering. I do think that with this following here, with this interesting pink color hat here, and this dolphin here, wow. You know, this is really interesting, because these swords, certainly the way they're being wielded here, speak to a kind of violence one way or the other, right? Let's hope it's just, I wouldn't say just psychological violence, because of course emotional abuse is very, it's no joke. I don't want to minimize that, any kind of abuse or violence, right? And let's hope that those of you that are resonating with this, it's not the more extreme end of the spectrum. But the way that this, it's interesting. So this Knight of Swords, it's like, how do you defend yourself from this kind of energy, but are also tender and open enough to open to somebody new when there's this risk of, whether it's manipulation, abusiveness, whatever it is? How do you move forward here with this Wheel of Fortune? But there's the way that he's holding this card, and also this dolphin. And dolphins are animals that have such positive associations, right? They're incredibly intelligent creatures that love people, really. And perhaps that's you. Perhaps that's you, Pal One. You love people, and also there's a romantic side to you, and perhaps that you wish you fulfilled in the past. Perhaps it's that intensity of romantic longing that you have that led you to close your heart up. Perhaps you experienced certain heartbreaks, and now, perhaps you're wishing that you'd done things differently, or just there's just something about, you wish that you'd believed in love, you wish you'd followed your heart, all of these things. The way that this person is engaging with this dolphin, it's like there's a real tenderness that's coming through here, but there's clearly a lot of fear about opening up to new things and wondering, how do you defend yourself, take care of yourself? How, after all these experiences, do you not become hard and keep people at bay, but then also be open enough to new things? Pile one, sorry about that jump. There was a bit of a technical failure there, but hey, I'm still here, and let's keep going with your pile. We were talking about the Knight of Swords. We were talking about how you approach relationships in a way that at once feels as if you are protecting yourself, but you are open enough to be vulnerable with others. I think that's something that you're facing. But I do strongly believe, Pearl Ones, that you're people that in the past have perhaps made the mistake of believing you could shut down in order to protect yourself. And despite facing some very difficult experiences, it seems that you are in this stage, or you're getting there, where you want this emotional renewal. You're somewhat optimistic about the potential of love and the possibility there for love, because it's like the way that this knight, I think it's the knight, is here with this dolphin. I think you're facing this, there's a part of you that sort of wants to put your weapons down, right? You realize that perhaps you've been fearful of the wrong things, right? You have been fearful of true emotional connections and the possibility of having your heart broken. But in avoiding those experiences, you've maybe had more superficial but also dramatic and conflict-ridden experiences. So it's like you've protected yourself in the wrong way. You've been armed against things that you never needed to be, and you have been defenseless in the face of things that have caused you harm. But there's a knowledge here, there's a self-awareness about these patterns, I think. And if you're not there yet, I think you're coming into that stage, Pile 1, because we have the 8 of Wands following this. And this is underneath this page of coins, this beautiful green sort of, this person is in this open field with this new potential and possibility, right? And the 8 of Wands is a card that speaks to movement. Just like the Wheel of Fortune, it definitely feels to me, Pile 1, like you are going somewhere. You have intention, there's a momentum in your life about moving forward. Some of you may have somebody in mind, there may be someone specific, but there's definitely the idea of love and the potential of harmonious and loving connections, which do not include in any way this destructive energy that we've been feeling over here. Like there's an enthusiasm, and if you're not feeling it yet, I do think you are coming into this of wanting to do things right, wanting to open yourself up to the potential, and wanting to really open up your heart and be vulnerable in the ways that you weren't before. So having this feeling card, the right way up, right? To be in tune with your emotions, to draw things to you which feel like they are truly emotionally nourishing and connecting with you at a deeper level. This reading, Pile 1, is all about relationship karma. It's all about patterns and things that perhaps lessons that you've had to learn in love. So we do have the mother archetype here coming through, and we have a pearl here. This is interesting. I do think, look, regardless of your gender identification, right, the mother is, of course, the mother typically, or perhaps should be, right, this nurturing feminine template. I do think for those of you that pick this pile, that maybe wasn't the case. It maybe wasn't the case, and whether you're male or female, non-binary, however you identify, it's like there has been some kind of struggle, right, with more typically feminine aspects, the inner feminine, right, creating balance between masculine and feminine. We have this struggle with feeling, so emotional receptivity, being in touch with your emotional side, which obviously isn't exclusively the realm of the feminine, right, but we all have our inner feminine and masculine, being emotionally, empathic and all of those things. And I do think this may in some cases be a struggle with your own mother or feminine, just caregiver, just that has blocked you in opening up to your own femininity and that side of yourself, nurturing and being nurtured and all of that. That may be a wound that may be conscious or unconscious. Either way, it's about balancing the masculine and feminine within, right? So there is this very strong and very difficult feminine energy that that I'm feeling here. That you may have experienced a lot of distorted feminine energy, which has colored your perception of the way relationships work. You maybe haven't experienced a lot of softness and nurturing in the ways that you would have wanted to. I think you are being asked to be that for yourself, self-nurturing. Like we were saying at the beginning, it's absolutely possible to achieve harmonious relationships, but it is required that you achieve an inner harmony to first off, right? However, I think learning to be your own nurturer and perhaps learning to mother yourself in ways that you weren't as a child, that'll look different for each of you. It doesn't mean that you were abandoned by your mother or had a terrible mother in any case, but there was some kind of distortion of the feminine that you may have experienced. There is a pearl here, though, in the middle of this mother card that is really drawing me in. I think, I just think that some of you, if you're not already, you're opening up to these things, you really are connecting to your inner feminine. Yeah, or you will be, because this pearl here is beautiful. It's at the center of this card. It's very glistening to me. I do think a lot of you, those of you that pick this pearl, you're not in this energy. Perhaps it's still around or there's a residue of it, but you've grown so much. These snakes, you've shed so much skin, you've evolved. I do think most of you are, because whenever I'm doing these spreads, it's like there's an arc, right? There's a story. And you may be ahead or behind of that arc. But I do think most of you are in this horse asylum phase of you've reached this place of calm and security reasonably, and you have reached this sort of sense of self-awareness about past patterns and an openness about changing things. So this mother energy world, while it may have been painful, it may have been a thorn in your side, it may have created a lot of distortion and misperception about others, about the way you view others, and also the potential of others to do harm. You may have found yourself quite suspicious of other people. This paranoia or this fear of being mistreated, it may have really affected your behavior, skewed your perception of people, because perhaps there's an expectation of mistreatment, and it's all about how you relate to the feminine, and it doesn't matter whether you are male or female, like you keep saying, but there's, with this pearl here, you're learning to relate to these things differently, or you're maybe having some perspective of awareness of these patterns and the root of these patterns, which in many cases may have to do with a mother figure. Yeah, but there's so much, you're overcoming so much here with the Wheel of Fortune and the Eight of Wands, and it's not easy, I can tell. And I do think a lot of you may have some anger that you need to work through and I think leave behind, because I think you've been through a lot, Pearl 1. We have the Birds card here in the Lenormand. I love red cardinals. It's a little red cardinal here in the card, if you can see. They don't live here in Europe. They're North American birds, right? So I miss them when I'm here. But the birds, in the Lenormand often speaks to sort of different voices, right? It can be quite a gossipy card, and it's interesting because I was picking up here on the Five of Wands. This is a relationship reading. We're asking about love, patterns in love, but it's like there's more people that are involving themselves in your relationship. So I don't know how that looks for each of you. It will be different. But the birds too speaks to just sort of like voices in your head, right? If you have suffered with sort of fears, paranoia about people, all of that, it's just like, it seems like you've allowed different voices to influence your approach to intimate one-to-one connections. So perhaps there's people weighing in or people gossiping. With this Five of Wands, there's people almost joining into the conflict, something like that. Sort of not allowing this sort of space one-on-one connections, because perhaps they felt too high stakes for you. There's an intimidation there of just the level of vulnerability it takes to connect to someone one-on-one. Pearl 1 just may have been very threatening to you, because perhaps you were in dynamics or have just and been in dynamics one-on-one with people, perhaps with a mother figure, where you felt manipulated, you felt as if that psychological tension, there was just some kind of real strife behind it. So you may have avoided it, you may have invested in different kinds of connections, maybe friendships, or you've given other people too much power over your choices or something like that. But we are ending here with the Anchor card in the Lenormand. So the Anchor is about, rooting yourself, finding stability, choosing to sort of make your home somewhere too, the Anchor. There's a real energy here to correct past mistakes, to turn this wheel in a different direction. I do think you are looking for newness in love and new possibilities in relationships, whether there's someone in mind or not, Pearl 1. I do think this energy is still fresh. I do think there's some kind of recovery or healing that needs to happen, but also there's a determination to do things a different way. And I do think that determination is very strong, even if you may be still in this asylum state where you're fearful of moving forward, you're fearful of risk. But I do think that you're taking a very positive perspective to this, or you will be. But I do think that a lot of you are longing for some kind of security and harmony. It's just understanding that it is possible. All of these experiences, as difficult as they seem, and it definitely, there's a lot of challenging energy here, Part 1. You've learned from them, and you are learning from them, and they've taught you something about your patterns, and like we're saying with karma, these patterns can have much deeper roots than we know. And I do think for some of you it's the case here. I hope that this provided some kind of clarity and an insight into whatever it is that you're going through. That's the intention of these reads, just for you to feel seen and understand that, you know, you're not the only one that's going through what you're going through, and also all things are transient and passing. And if you have felt yourself stuck in this Five of Wands, Queen of Wands, like this very Queen of Swords, this more challenging conflict state, you are moving out of it. So, yeah, pull one. I think I will leave it there, but I did enjoy reading for you today, and I do hope that it meant something to you, and I look forward to reading for you next time. Bye, everyone. Pile 2, welcome to your reading. You picked the Lapis Lazuli, the incredible blue Lapis Lazuli. And so today our reading is all about your love karma, your relationship karma. We're looking at patterns that you may have faced in relationships in the realm of romantic love. We're looking for insights, we're looking for clarity on these patterns and moving through any obstacles or these cycles that it feels like you can get caught in, right? And you don't know where they're rooted, and you don't necessarily know the way out. There may be something there that needs to be acknowledged, some kind of insight. So that's what we're looking for, Pile 2, and that's what we're hoping to gain some clarity on today. So we have the Chariot here, we have Primordial, we have the Star in reverse. Okay, we have the Lovers, we have the Three of Swords, we have the Ace of Swords, or is that the Page of Swords? This is a newish deck, and they're not the cards aren't labeled with what they are, so it's guesswork some of the time. So I think it's either the Page of Swords or that could be the Ace of Swords, but I read energy, not cards, so it doesn't really matter to me so much. We'll have a look when we get to it. So we also have Death, Transfiguration, and the Dead End. Okay, and in the mini Lenormand here we have Heart and Snake. Okay, let me just check the frame, Pile 2. I think you can more or less see everything. Let's just shuffle a little bit in this direction so you can see these two, and then we will get going. Okay, so the Chariot. Of course, the Chariot is all about moving forward. It's also being in control, right, of that movement. It's about this kind of a strong sort of sense of power and feeling like you're sort of in the driver's seat of your own life. That's the whole sensation of the Chariot, being able to go and achieve what you want. I'm feeling like you, Pile 2, are somebody that kind of has a strong sense and has always had a strong sense of what they wanted from life, and may have been very active in pursuing what you wanted. You may have had a lot of desires, a lot of ideas about how you wanted your life to look in the realm of relationships, and you weren't afraid of going after what you want, willing to take risks, willing to push forward. But there's also just a desire for movement and a desire for things to happen. Sometimes these desires may have almost gotten the best of you, something like that, because there's the Primordial card that's following here. And Primordial, it's all about these most sort of the organic, natural, sort of age-old, like before time, these things that are very, very deeply rooted. I think there's something, it's like you're motivated at times, Pile 2, by these very subconscious longings, something like that. There's these very deep, it's like perhaps at times you feel like this Chariot motion, like you're being driven in directions you don't necessarily understand or feel like you're consciously choosing. Like the Chariot usually is very sort of in control of their desires and where they want to go, but at times perhaps you felt like you were being driven by forces that you didn't understand, that were coming from a subconscious place, something like that. Either way, I am feeling that some of you Pile 2s, you may have felt as if, we have the dead end here, and I was about to say that you've reached a dead end, or you've reached a kind of barrier where it feels like whatever was propelling you to move forward in the past it's like you've run out of steam, or like your batteries have run out. It's something like there's this desire to move, and there's been a lot of passion and momentum, but it's like you've hit this wall somewhere where you're re-examining things, or you're looking at the roots of things, because we have this star card in reverse, which often I think the star in reverse can really speak to a lack of hope or disenchantment, right? The star card, when it's upright, is all about sort of faith and knowing that you're going in the right direction. And this chariot definitely is going somewhere, or wants to go somewhere, but perhaps where you're going has become unclear. Perhaps you used to feel much more optimistic in the past that things would work out in a positive way, that there was a lot of opportunity and potential out there. But it's like you have been going through, and with this primordial card, it's like you really perhaps felt, Paltu, that there was something out there for you that you were determined to find, and you were maybe very optimistic in life, in life and love, right, at certain points, and perhaps you still are, but that optimism is wavering. Perhaps you've been hoping to meet someone for a long time, and you're struggling to maintain optimism in the possibility of love coming through for you. Primordial, yeah, it's like I think you feel like you have so much to give, but there is this very deep longing that I'm picking up on, almost as if perhaps some of you feel like if you just found the right person, that it would fill a kind of void. And I think all of us feel that a little bit to a degree, right? That if we could find the right partner, if we could find the right job and all of that, then we would be complete and feel good. But of course it rarely works out that way. Like, we have to fill ourselves up from within. Ultimately, the ideal partner is someone that complements us and that we are mutually supportive of, right? Not someone that fills some kind of gap. You may be questioning all these things. You may be examining a lot of your beliefs in love, some of which may be beliefs about love and relationships, and some of these may be subconscious. Things like you were perhaps operating on certain beliefs that now feel quite challenged. We have the Death Transfiguration card here, which, you know, maybe it's not a very friendly card, but I, for one, am never really, I always welcome the death cards and these kind of, like, in the tarot, because it definitely, because it always shows us that that growth is happening, right? And you're letting go of things that aren't beneficial to you, potentially belief systems or ideas about how your life would be. But there's a natural order to these things. There's a natural cycles in which we, there is waxing and waning, but you're definitely letting go of something here. There is a loss of hope that I feel like you've been experiencing, or there may have been sort of losses, endings that you didn't want, that forced you to examine what you really wanted from life and from other people, or what you really wanted in a relationship. There's definitely been, I think, some kind of unwanted ending, and it may not have happened recently. And maybe like an overall feeling of a lack of control. The Chariot wants to be in control of their passage, and perhaps you've been really holding on to that, or trying to feel like you're in control of something. But this Death card, like, it comes along to show us that we're not, that we can make our own choices. We have a certain degree of control over, we have control over our behavior, and we can learn to train ourselves to think and approach life in a certain way, but we cannot control other people. We cannot control really what happens to us at all. And sometimes there are endings and cycles that are beyond our control. You may feel quite powerless right now, Paltu. You may feel like you don't have control or agency over your own fate. Like you're subject to so much that is, you can't influence, things like that. Overall, yes, there may have been losses, unwanted losses in the past. Perhaps you feel like you've been on an unlucky run and you're struggling to maintain your optimism, but there's a necessary shedding that's happening, shedding of old ideas. And I'm not speaking like if you've been a very romantic person that you have to grow up and look at things in a more realistic way. No, it's not like that. It's about allowing old approaches and old beliefs to strip away for something newer to come through. And I think it can be related to this idea of thinking that someone else is going to complete you or make your life make sense, make life make sense. I do think that if you want a very mutually beneficial and positive partnership with someone else, doing the work beforehand is going to bring the most... If you want the best case scenario, right, then it's best to have done that work beforehand, to be complete and sort of self-sufficient, or to feel like you can sort of partner yourself and be there for yourself, because then all you really need from that other person is love and support, and you can give them that love and support, right, Pal 2. So I think it's the shedding of beliefs, and there's something here about timing. Like maybe it's like I'm feeling like a lot of you are very eager to find the right person, and maybe you're on a lot of apps and you really put a lot of work into finding the right person, but you're having to get to this point of acknowledging that it's sort of, you know what you want, and you don't just want anyone. You want to feel that that person is your person if you're committing to someone, and that's really important. So you're having to let go of the idea that you can control this, that there's an element of fate, whatever you want to call it, chance, that you just can't control. We do have the Lovers card here, which is very lovely to see. I do think a lot of you do have quite a romantic nature. You may be someone that falls in love easily or has fallen in love a lot. There may also be somebody on your radar. I am getting that. There may be someone that has your heart right now. And this is, okay, so this is followed by the Three of Swords card. So we have the Lovers and then the Three of Swords. And look at this character on the Three of Swords. Look at the way that he is just sort of cradling himself and closed off and in pain. So what I'm feeling here is that there may or may not be someone on your radar. For some of you, there's definitely a person that you have your eye on and you would like to move towards with this Chariot card. For others, it's just the idea of someone, right? However, you've lost a lot of faith here based on past experiences, and you've been going through this real transformation of your ideals, of what you thought your life would look like, and all of this. There's so much fear of hurt here. Pile 1 had a similar sort of thread, and I guess it's not uncommon, right? We have difficult experiences and it becomes harder for us to keep the faith, to be optimistic about love. Some people are lucky enough to just find someone, they go to college, they meet someone when they're really young and they stick together and all of that. Other people, essentially you have more relationship karma. That's what this reading is about. You have debts to pay off, you have lessons to learn. However these things work, we're not entirely sure, but there's things that you have to learn in love, and I think that's the case with you, Paul, too, that you're sort of, I do think a lot of you have had broken hearts in the past, or you've had disappointments, you've had unwanted losses, and whether there's a person that you want now with this Lovers card, someone that's just stimulated your romanticism, you're very wary of over-romanticizing things or making the same mistakes, but to the point that there's a risk here of closing yourself up to love, because you fear this Three of Swords so much, because that's the way it's been. It's like, for those of you in this pile, you just may have been, unfortunately, the one that got, that was left rather than the one that left. And you may have had one too many experiences where you feel like you were knocked down or your heart was sort of bruised. And it's natural, it's only human that you would become self-protective after that. That you would sort of curl up like this creature on the Three of Swords and be like, not sure that I want that anymore. How do I prevent this from happening? And also, how can I be optimistic? This Chariot card wants to move towards something. So whether it's an actual person that is currently in your energy, or just the possibility, like you're aware of the possibility, like how do I keep the faith? When I know how badly these things can hurt, and you don't know how to open up here, you just don't. This Three of Swords is making me sad. It's like, you've been bruised one too many times, I think, Paul Twos. If you were here with me and I was giving you a reading, I would give you a hug, but obviously you're watching this on the internet, so this is I'm going to read this as the Page of Swords. Like I was telling you, I'm not quite sure that it is that, but we do usually on the Ace of Swords we don't have any figures. So I do think this is a Page of Swords, and there is the way that this character is. I do think for a lot of you there is someone that has caught your eye, and I don't think it's developed yet. It's just somebody that has stimulated your romantic side, the lovers, someone that you maybe want to move towards, that's stirring up this kind of romantic longing, but you're struggling to have the faith and the possibility that it could work out. Maybe you want to approach this person, maybe you want to initiate something. Yeah, this person really pushes your buttons, I think, for those of you that have someone in mind. You may be sort of stalking them a little bit on the internet. With the Page of Swords always has that vibe, right, where digging for info, scrolling, looking at pictures. So yeah, there's maybe someone around, but I do feel like you're keeping your distance, those of you that this applies to with this Three of Swords. It's like perhaps there's been opportunities to connect with this person, or perhaps there's ways that you could connect with them, but I think you're struggling to allow this newness in, because you're struggling not to see the ending before it ends. And this happens after disappointments, all the ways something can go wrong. You want this star to be upright. You want to feel hopeful in love again. This Lovers card is upright, so you're very capable of still loving. The feelings are there. You haven't blocked off your feelings, Paltu. And I do think you're feeling something for someone, or many of you may be. But it's like, taking these arms out from covering your chest and allowing this person in, because we have a Queen of Cups here. Frida Kahlo is our Queen of Cups today. Hi, Frida. Some of you may have a connection to Mexico. I love Mexico. This Queen of Cups, and of course it can be any gender, right? You could be male, you could be female, it really doesn't matter. Everyone's welcome, non-binary, whoever you are. I do think this card is sort of representing somebody maybe, but also just a way of, the Queen of Cups is very emotionally literate. Like, she knows how to read her feelings, she's very in touch with her feelings, and she's very open with them, which is not something that this Three of Swords figure is currently feeling that is coming easy to them, right? The Queen of Cups just feels what she feels. She's open about that. She's giving and receiving of emotions. Look at all this pink. There's a lot of pink here, down here, and a lot of purples. There's a lot of feelings circulating here that aren't being acted on with this Chariot, but it's clear that you want to act on them, Pal 2. This, of course, could be someone in your energy, right? This person I may be picking up on. If this story seems familiar, but you're feeling that this is maybe somebody that you're dealing with or something like that, then just go with that. Because this Queen of Cups speaks to the possibility for a mutually emotionally nourishing bond where feelings are shared freely, and that's what you want. I know that's what you want, Paul, too, but there's these blockages, and with the dead end card here over here, it's like, yeah, it's just like you're playing out the worst scenario before you've even given something a chance. You're thinking about all the ways that things can go wrong, all of the ways that your heart is going to be messed with. So someone could show up in your world, a Queen of Cups type, a King of Cups type, someone that's seems very emotionally receptive, and the kind of ideal partner, right? Someone that you feel very emotionally connected to, someone that's very gentle. And you might try and engage with that person and develop something with them, but it's like all the while there's all these voices in your head saying, oh, this will never work. This person is just going to crush me and treat me this way and all of that. And that can start to color your behavior. It can color the way that you engage with people. It can color the way that you interpret other people's actions. All of this. I'm getting that for a lot of you, this has become a problem. Like, it's become a problem to the point that, yes, this Queen of Cups, or there could be someone around, could be the most loving and true and honest person. But you'll start to read into that in a negative way and think, oh, but they probably have some kind of hidden dark side, like this kind of thing, because that's what you've known. it's because things didn't work out in the end. In the past. It's only about finding one person, right? One person that we can share our time with. Difficult past experiences, they teach us things, and this is what we're asking about here. How do we move through these things and create more positive potential in love? Because it's clear here that there's a lesson in keeping the faith, allowing yourself to learn from what wasn't meant for you. And I do think for some of you it may have been a very strong romanticism. You may have you may just be like a real romantic, and that there's nothing wrong with that, and I'm not going to tell you to toughen up and have a more realistic approach, because I disagree with that. Like the world is whatever you want it to be, and there's other romantics out there. So if you want to kind of latch on and romanticize someone, make sure it's someone that's also on that wavelength. That is what I would suggest, because and also because I can't not see it as in, like, we all have different love natures, a different Venus side. I see things through an astrological lens often when it comes to people and their behavior. So maybe you're, for instance, a Venus in Pisces who does have a more romantic nature. You're better off, for instance, with a Venus in Cancer or a water sign, or someone earthy, a Venus in Taurus, someone like that, who will be very, allow you that romanticism, than somebody that just doesn't necessarily. I'm not saying that the fire and air sign, Venus signs are not romantic, but someone, for instance, with a Venus in Sagittarius, if you, with a Venus in Pisces, have latched on to someone like that, I don't mean latched on to be insulting to you, but if you're romanticizing someone that actually needs a lot of freedom, is not someone that you just need different things. Because my feeling is that in your pursuit, this real pursuit of love, there's very deep, you have so much deep love to offer and give, Paul, too, I know it, that in that process, you've maybe been almost a little too eager to find the person, so you've sort of tried to, you've allowed that romanticism to drive you, basically. So perhaps you've met people that, with perspective, you might have been able to see that they weren't quite the right people, but you've been fully invested in that potential, and it might have blown up in your face. But there's change and growth here. We have death and transfiguration. You're growing and you're learning from your mistakes. I would say that this star here is in reverse, but there's a star here behind this skeleton on the death card, in that it's really a matter of looking at things. You may feel like your romanticism has been bruised and that you need to take a different approach to life, but I think it's just about allowing natural growth and change to happen, letting go of some old habits. It's not about letting go of a romantic view of life and the potential of relationships. It's about the way you go about it. Really getting to know people and making sure they're on your wavelength, right? And they have the same sort of attitude and expectations in relationships before you go all in, right? Because this Chariot is very ready to go all in on things. But I do think some of this, some old pain, some old heartbreak, you do need to let it move through you, right? Because the character on this card is really curling up with old heartache to the point that it's blocking new energy. So I do think just allowing yourself to grieve past losses, it's an important part of moving on so that new things can come through to you. We have the dead end here, and this is not a dead end in your love life. This is a dead end in terms of taking a particular approach. And it's also the perception. It's a perception. And it's about fear of taking risks. Because like I said, I was picking up on that some of you do have a potential, an opportunity, somebody that you would like to move forward with, or someone that you would like to explore something with. And allowing that to happen without, it's like expectations becoming self-fulfilling prophecies, right? There's that risk if you don't work through this old heartache of projecting it onto the next person, and then you can end up creating the very thing you feared because of expectation. Our expectations are very, very powerful. What we believe life to be about, right? You do need to work through, there's like this thicket on this dead end. So it's about working through and processing pain and perhaps disappointment so that you don't project it onto the next person. You may currently just feel very inhibited and limited by this pain. There's a lot of emotions that you're feeling though with this Lovers card. Like, I think you are really feeling it for somebody, but yeah, this Three of Swords character is just like, and it's sort of being very protective and like, I don't want to move because I don't want to get hurt. But then on this card, you're watching someone, like there's someone that I think you do want, or there may be different people on your radar, and you're like, maybe that person. But it's like there's a part of you that's sort of content to watch from afar because it doesn't involve you risking anything. Yeah. We have the heart here in the Lenormand deck underneath this dead end, but we have this very positive card here. And look at this. It's about offering your heart freely, right? This heart is like, compare this. Compare these two cards. Like, here these hands are clasped in front of this person's body and their heart is being stabbed, right? Here we have open hands and this heart is just floating there. It's about opening up and knowing that vulnerability, just accepting that vulnerability and the possibility of heartache is something you can't escape if you want to open up to someone else. That's we all risk that in love, that things may not work out, but we have to make we have to make risks that feel, there's always risk there, but it's about making a calculated risk that we don't risk our heart on everyone. And that's perhaps the difficult lesson here, right? Is being discerning about who you want to open up to. Don't go all in at once. Get to know people and don't offer your heart to everyone. Some of you are maybe watching this thinking, no, I don't offer my heart to everyone. But it's an approach. It's a certain approach. There's such a desire and an eagerness for love and for union. And I do think this is not a dead end, like for you, Paltu. Like, if you, it's about transforming this Three of Swords energy here and this fear into this card of open-hearted, being willing to open your heart despite the risks, to reclaim the faith, but it's about going about things in a different way. And yeah, to just circle back to not expecting someone else to be the answer to your life. You are the answer to your life. Like, to be able to provide yourself with emotional nourishment first, so that all you really need from a partner is a supportive companion that loves you, right? And that you do the same. It's not about asking them to heal you, to do the work for you that you don't want to do yourself. So if some of you, if there's just, old wounds, old pain, old cycles that have to end here, you have to do that work. It's if there's a broken heart, right, that this belief that someone we need, in order to heal from a broken heart, we need someone else to come in and heal it, right? No, I think you're going to have a much more meaningful and positive relationship if you heal that heart yourself. You spend some time examining past patterns, examining choices that you've made, and also just feeling your feelings, working through any grief or pain or sense of loss, allowing this death transfiguration process to happen, and then moving on with a clean slate, regaining your sense of hope. It only takes one person to go right, but you have to be open to that person. We have the snake here, which in the Lenormand is kind of a temptation card, right? Is the snake, because I always kind of interpret snakes very positively. I know that not everyone has positive associations with snakes. In general, I do. Like, I see them as very spiritual emblems of regeneration. But we do have an apple on this card, yeah. There's desire. This is just speaking to desire. There's the desire for something, for moving forward with something. There's something that you do want, but the way this snake here is sort of moving towards a dead end, I think you're telling yourself that you can't have what you want, or you're blocking something before it has the chance to happen, because you're just fearing the worst. Yeah. If some of you, with this star card also, it can just speak to sort of negative thinking, right? Depressive thinking. And if that is you, of course, working through these things, recovering, allowing yourself time for recovery, but also acknowledging that depressive negative thinking distorts the way we perceive things. It is a distortion. The world is negative, it's also positive. There are great things out there, there are terrible things out there. Taking a balanced point of view if you're someone that's watching this telling yourself, there's no, love will never work out, there's no one for me, like I don't want, like that's a distorted perception. There's heartache out there. There's also potential for successful love relationships, but those that have those meaningful and positive relationships, because we never really know, right? We never really know what other people's relationships are like, but I do strongly believe that the more you work on taking care of yourself, being your own sort of partner, working through your own stuff so that you don't expect other people to do it for you, or you don't expect a relationship to be the answer to your problems, the more likely you are to have a positive relationship. So I do feel with those of you, like, especially if there is someone in mind and you want to take a risk, I do think it's important that you put some work into this star card, into regaining faith in life, to moving past any negative thought patterns or any depressive kind of thinking, because it's limiting. It's very, you're boxing yourself in, and it's not the energy. This is not the energy that you need to move forward in. It's we need the Chariot here, and we need this star upright in order, and we want this dead end card to just be like off the move on, and we want to transform this Three of Swords energy into this lovely open heart energy. So I do think it's allowing yourself to grow and change through disappointment, through setbacks, but don't let it dull your optimism. Don't let it, maybe it didn't work out with one person in the past, with two people in the past, however many setbacks you've faced, it doesn't mean that things can't go very, very right. But the approach and also like perceiving things as being beyond your control, right? So thinking whether things work out too, of course, it depends how we're showing up to the world, and how we show up to other people is going to determine how things unravel around us. So feeling like we are helpless and fate is just unraveling for us, that's I think a distorted perception too. Like, we show up to life, what we put into things is going to affect what we get out. So the manner in which you show up in this Chariot, perhaps potentially to a Queen of Cups type or whoever it is, with your emotions is going to affect the outcome of whatever that is. So I hope this was helpful. There may have been some tough lessons that you've had to learn in the realm of relationships, but absorbing those lessons and letting those lessons, receiving them. Your heart is precious, Pile 2, and you should give it only to somebody who truly sees it as precious and wonderful and will care for it. I'm absolutely not suggesting you should be guarded with your heart. I'm suggesting you should be discerning about who is worthy of it and who really deserves your heart and your time. I hope this resonated for some of you. Do leave me a comment if it did. I'd love to hear from you guys. I'm rooting for you, Pile 2s, and I look forward to reading for you again in the future. Bye. Pile 3, welcome to your reading. You picked this Amazonite, the green Amazonite. So today we're asking all about your relationship karma. We are looking for insight into sort of patterns in love and relationships, and how we might gain some insight into those patterns and move forward in a more positive way, right? Sometimes we can feel like we can get really, really stuck in certain loops and be going through the same pattern over and over, but we don't know why. So that's what we're looking at today, Pile 3. Like, we want insight into what those things may be. So we have the Death card in reverse here. We have Impasse in reverse. Okay. We have the King of Wands in reverse. We have the Nine of Pentacles. We have this deck is a little confusing to me. It doesn't name what the cards are. But you know what? It doesn't really matter to me too much. I'm just going to read. I read the energy of the cards. Yeah, I don't know what this one is either. Haven't seen these cards before, and the others were a little bit more clear to me. But like I said, I'm an intuitive reader, guys. I read I read the energy. I do not read the cards. The cards sort of traditional meaning is more of just a sort of signpost for me to read the energy. So I will get to these cards when I get to them. We have Justice and we have the Deep End. We have the Mirror. And in the mini Lenormand here, we have Rider and Coffin. Okay. Let me just check that you can see everything. Some very interesting energy. I'm going to just shuffle here a little bit in this direction so that everything is in view and you can take in all of these cards. So let's get into this. Pile 3, we have Death in reverse. So Death in reverse often speaks of a reluctance to let go of cycles and letting the natural order occur, right? Natural cycles. Life is all about the ebbs and flows, right? Letting things come in, letting things leave. This is the way life is. Nothing lasts forever. Some relationships are long-standing, others are brief. That bears no relation to their meaning, right, and what they can bring to us. There's a reluctance here to let go that is coming up here for you, Pile 3, at the head of the read. So this is a substantial pattern in your approach to love, to relationships. You may have found yourself very attached to certain people. Perhaps you've struggled to really move on from old relationships, old connections, things like that. You may have had very difficult endings that felt ambiguous and uncertain to you and have felt trapped in that uncertainty. And in doing so, perhaps really blocked potential, because we have impasse here, which is in reverse. So there's this thicket, right? So if this was upright, it's like, yeah, we have this resistance to natural change, and then we have the impasse. If it's like the cards are doing two opposite things, right? Because if that was upright, it's like, yeah, it's just reinforcing the message. But because, sorry, that siren is very loud. An impasse in reverse suggests that you are moving out of this, or there is this current potential for you to move beyond these limiting patterns of getting stuck in things, of perhaps getting stuck in things for years, of struggling to move on, of struggling to just have clarity and just sort of, yeah, this impasse stage. Yeah, I feel like just for some of you watching this, it's like something happened meaningful to you and there was never a clear ending. You maybe just got caught in a back and forth and you were never able to move on for a variety of reasons. However, this impasse in reverse is like, no, you're moving away from that because it has been disempowering for you. We have the King of Wands right next to this. A very powerful card, all about sort of creativity and personal power, right? Being able to put your mind to something and achieve it. You may have felt left completely powerless by whatever this is. You're just unable to affect any real change, as if you weren't in control of your own life, that you were completely at the mercy of somebody else's whims and choices. You may have, for some of you, may have spent a long time sort of waiting for somebody or something to work out, but what has actually happened is that you've blocked new growth. But I think a lot of you have just suffered with a lack of confidence, or it's diminished your power because you felt like you weren't in control, that someone else was in control, and that you couldn't really exert change. I think just some of you may have just experienced a serious lack of confidence or have felt very defeated by a particular situation, and it doesn't have to be about just one person. It may be a pattern, just a pattern of, there's something about just sort of giving up your own power to others, right? And it will look different for each of you, pile threes, those of you that pick this pile, but it's like there's a giving away of personal power, and it may just be in simply energy. For instance, like when we speak of energy, and this is what the tarot is about, we read energy through the tarot. Whenever we attach ourselves, like we don't have to be sending messages or knocking on someone's door. So long as we are invested mentally and emotionally in someone, we are energetically invested in them, right? And that can leave us feeling quite diminished and drained because we don't have energy for other things and we don't necessarily have energy for people. Whatever patterns you have found yourself stuck in, pile 3, it has led to a real sense of defeat, of a lack of personal power. And I think it is because energy that should have been invested into you, into yourself, into your own growth and your own creativity and all of these things, has been directed at somebody else or in a potential connection. Now, we do have the deep end here. This is a great card. Those of you, whenever I'm doing these spreads and I'm talking through an arc, right, a particular circumstances, some of you may find yourself behind that curve, or some of you may find that you're ahead of it. So yeah, just go with what makes sense to you. These are patterns, right? And they're patterns that we share, and that's why readings like this can feel very personal, right? Because we're very connected to each other, and you're never alone with the things that you're going through. This deep end, I do think pile 3s, you have done a lot of deep work, a lot of personal work. This death energy, you may still be struggling to let something go. However, in the past, you may have felt utterly consumed by something or someone. But you've been doing a lot of deep diving. You've been doing like the energy that you had focused on this situation. And if you're not there yet, I think this is where the energy is going, right? So you will get there. If you've put a lot of energy into someone else, you have, or you will be turning that energy around and looking at yourself and healing yourself and not expecting a particular outcome or someone to show up and heal you. You've been doing the healing work, or you will be. That is very necessary here, is not thinking that the answer to your problems is in waiting for someone that seems not to be showing up, and when they show up, everything will be put to rights and you'll be feeling all good. No. There is self-healing that has to happen in order for whoever it is. Perhaps it's someone that you've been hung up on, or perhaps it's someone that's really just someone new. Just whatever that energy is, it has to do with work. The blockages here, this impasse, I feel like has to do with, it's not about the other person. The other person becomes a trigger, right, for this sense of powerlessness. And this can be rooted in childhood, it can be rooted in all kinds of things. When we're talking about karma, we're also talking about like past life patterns and all that, whether you entertain that kind of idea or not. Sometimes these things are much more deeply rooted. But either way, it's like, basically the circumstance itself, or the person, or whether there's potential there, whether it can be resolved, is kind of irrelevant. It's showing you this tendency to turn away from yourself and your own needs and towards other people's needs, expecting that there should be some kind of rescue that happens. Your focus should be on yourself, on your own healing, in your own rescue. You can take care of yourself, you can heal yourself. And as I was saying in Pile 2, taking this approach to relationships that someone else will come and complete you and be the missing piece of you, all as tempting as that is, you can take that approach, but I don't think it's going to lead to the most fulfilling connections. The most fulfilling and I think meaningful connections are going to come when both people are not expecting the other to take care of them, not to take care of them, but to just fix them, right? That they've already fixed and are working on fixing their own issues, doing their own inner work, their own healing, so that both can come together in this state of mutual support and love, right? Just needing love and support, not expecting that person to fix you. So taking care of yourself first. This deep end card is speaking to me all about exploring your own depths and potentially your own trauma and difficult experiences, which could have led to experiences like this, where you felt very confused and very lost, and as if you were in this state of waiting and without any agency to affect change. If you feel like you're still there, Pile 3, the way out is through this card. The way out is diving deep into yourself and looking at your own patterns and healing yourself. Because this is followed by the 9 of Pentacles, who is the self-sufficient, self-made person in the tarot, right? Yeah, I mean, what does this say on this card? This is Virgo? I don't know. Anyway, so the 9 of Pentacles is all good by themselves, right? It doesn't mean that you can or want to be alone forever, but the 9 of Pentacles kind of doesn't need anyone to come and rescue them. the Nine of Pentacles is good. Like, they've done their work, they're independent, they're self-sufficient, and perhaps they would like a companion and to reach the Ten of Pentacles stage, but hey, if not, then not. They're good to go. It's about reaching this state of not needing whatever this was to come through, because you've done your inner work, you've faced your own depths, your own fears, your own blockages, right? This horrible knotted impasse. Like, you've moved past this. This is being rejected. You're no longer going to stay in this state of pause that feels beyond your control. You're moving on, and you're moving on by going deep into yourself, so that you can sort of embody this Nine of Pentacles energy of self-sufficiency, of growth, of freedom and independence. But you can also really feel good about yourself. Feeling really good about yourself and knowing that you have so much to offer. There's no reason why you should have to stay in some kind of state of waiting or being at someone else's mercy, right? Because what is happening on this card? You know what? This to me speaks to a card of healing. I'm not quite sure what tarot card this is. I don't like to study the decks before I work with them, at least the traditional tarot decks. I studied this oracle deck. Oracles can be a bit different. With the tarot, I like to see fresh images, so working with new tarot decks, but yeah, this deck just doesn't label them. But the energy I'm getting from it has almost a Four of Swords vibe. I don't think this is the Four of Swords, but of reaching this, freeing yourself from this death in reverse energy, acknowledging these cycles and letting things go. There is healing work to be done with this deep end to achieve this state of Nine of Pentacles. Finding peace with things. And I don't think it has anything to do with relationships. I think perhaps some of you may have experienced certain traumas or early life experiences that have to do with powerlessness, which was what this King of Wands card in reverse was telling me, of feeling like you are powerless or you don't have control. So it's almost as if our perhaps all of our romantic experiences, perhaps all of our experiences in general, are engineered to show us something about ourselves and our expectations and our inner beliefs. There is a real need here to regain a sense of your own power. Know that you can take care of yourself and heal yourself and can be independent, that you don't need anyone. Perhaps you would like someone, but you do not need someone to come along and permit you to have self-confidence and value. If other people do not see your value, then that's them, right? See your own value. Put your faith, invest in yourself, right? So here we have, what do we have here? Again, both of these cards are sort of showing me almost this kind of very womb-like, or I do think with those of you that pick this pile, there is some kind of early life issues, potentially traumas that led to whatever this was, and also that need healing, that need exploration. It's almost like there's a rebirth that needs to happen. Perhaps for some of you it has happened, or it's in the process of happening, so that you can truly embody the Nine of Pentacles. Some of you may be largely unconscious of certain blockages that have led to difficult situations like this, of maybe feeling neglected too, or the state of just like you don't have any control, that you have no power. I don't know. Yeah, so there's something about dreams coming through to me, but there's also a baby here in the corner. And there's some animals here. There's a lot of animals. Yeah, this card is just speaking to me of healing, of necessary healing work, of exploring the subconscious for old patterns and old wounds and really working through them, whatever they are. There's a lot going for you, I think, Pile 3. You have a lot going for you, and you have a lot of energy around you that is sort of supporting you in doing some difficult healing. So if some of you are sort of seeking out certain treatments in order to resolve some old issues and face old issues, then I think this reading is really confirming the need for that, and to seek out whatever help you think might work for you. It requires a certain kind of surrender, right? And an openness to be vulnerable, to really explore your own depth here with the deep end. But I do think that most of you are at this point where you've already done some work, or you're very willing to go deeper into it. And it may run very, very deep, for sure. And that's not easy. It isn't easy. We have the Justice card here, yeah. It definitely feels like there's something that needs to be put to rights in the situation that you're facing, whatever that looks like for you, Pole 1. Justice is sort of, the karmic scales. So it may be, I mean, this reading is about love karma, right? And these ancient Egyptian figures, these hieroglyphs on this Justice card, is sort of drawing my attention to the fact that the things that maybe you've experienced in this incarnation are rooted perhaps also in past life experiences, in that certain healing or lessons learned here is something that your soul has been working on for a while, which have to do with truly connecting with others in a very open and loving way. This balance between self and other, in being this very self-sufficient and independent Nine of Pentacles person, but also being a good partner. It's like, it's not one or the other. It's maintaining independence and self. You can be the Nine of Pentacles and also be in a very loving and giving relationship, and there's some kind of karmic lesson that I'm picking up on here, pile 3, that has to do with struggling with this balance. Because it's as if some of you've been dealing with perhaps some old wounds that are unrelated to romantic relationships. They're just old traumas, whatever it is, whatever that looks like. But the expectation of rescue by somebody else. So avoiding the work because you're focused elsewhere. Projecting your energy at others rather than yourself, all of that. Finding balance between self and other, and having relationships that are mutually loving and beneficial, but they're not codependent, is an important lesson for your soul to learn this time around. And a way to move forward with that, yes, is to be your own rescuer, is to do your own healing work, to not expect someone else to come in and fix you if there's someone that you have been waiting for. We do have the mirror here in the archetype deck. Yeah. So a lot of the difficult experiences that you have been having are experiences that are sort of designed to reflect some of your more painful wounds. I mean, we can say it's always the case, right? Because I know a lot of people like to talk about things like twin flames and what have you. I haven't really mentioned these ideas, which are theories, of course, very interesting theories of soul connections. I do think all of our close relationships, and maybe even all the people we encounter in large and small ways, reflect something of us. The more intense those connections become, whether we call them soulmates, twin flames, what have you, the more intense this mirror effect is of bringing up our deepest wounds. You, part 3, maybe we can call it a twin flame, whatever it is, a mirror soul connection. I do think whatever this had to do with, was a very, very intense soul connection which reflected your deepest wounds, and they will look different for each of you. However, you may have struggled to see it for what it was. This death, holding on to something, or holding on to a certain stage of a cycle, or expecting someone to come back, all of this was blocking you seeing the reflection, how this person's action, or persons, whoever it is, made you feel, which has to do with powerlessness and more, right? Just the lack of control. Like, it'll be different for each of you that are watching and connecting with this, but it was reflecting and is reflecting something about your inner experience, your old wounds, your traumas, all of that. There is a lesson in this, but there may have been a delay here in you really acknowledging what that reflection was telling you. I do think most of you that are watching this, you are at a different stage now. If you're not seeing it all, you're on the path to seeing really what's being reflected in this mirror through these past experiences. You have a lot to learn from these things, But both of these cards here are sort of speaking to going very deeply inwards with this. There may be a wound of abandonment here, a wound of neglect, and also, control and power, and these themes, these are really coming through to me. But I do think with this Justice card, your soul perhaps has really struggled with the balance between self and other and codependency, and perhaps not doing your own work at times and expecting, I suppose, expecting love to be the answer to everything. But self-love is a part of that. Of course, we have the Rider here in the Lenormand deck, so some of you are going somewhere. I was picking up that a lot of you have been doing a lot of healing work or in that process. Those of you that are or have contemplated things, or you have things that interested you, and some of that may involve going somewhere or joining some kind of a group, a healing practice, something like that. I do think that there's a journey that you're on, and you're in the middle of that journey. There's more to learn on that journey, and to not resist that, not to resist this movement or riding or going where you need to be going. It's going to bring, I'm looking at the 9 here, and it's making me think of the 9 of Cups. Wherever the energy is taking you, as challenging as this journey may be and have been for a while, it's taking you to your wish fulfillment. It's taking you to everything that you want. The 9 of Pentacles is also a 9, right? You're heading there. You're getting in this direction. This 9 of Pentacles, self-sufficiency, independence, but also that 9 of Cups kind of fulfillment, because this also has a 9 on it. Yeah, we have the Coffin here, and on this card, I'm always notice the butterfly in this card. Like, endings happen in order for transformation and metamorphosis. Because the Death in reverse, you may have struggled, pile 3, for a long time to let certain things go, let certain things end, let go of old patterns, old beliefs. It will look different for each of you, but this needs to happen. You have to let go of something in order to grow. You have to let go of old patterns. There's a real dragging your feet thing, but then on the other hand, I do think you are moving out of this. I do think there is a lot of growth happening because you have been diving deep, and this Rider card is taking you somewhere. Let it take you somewhere, and let whatever endings that organically need to happen, because I think you've struggled with that. That's what you're being asked to do right now. Most primarily, the most important thing is letting things go that are no longer serving you, working through old wounds. Let this situation teach you through reflection, right? How does it make you feel? How has this old scenario, this old pattern, how does it make you feel? There's a lesson to be learned there, so it's about receiving that lesson. And I do think some of you will be leaving these patterns behind very soon and moving on with this butterfly to this number 9, to self-sufficiency, to wish fulfillment, whatever that looks like for you, whatever you want that to be. That is the direction the energy is moving in. But we have these cards in the middle here which are speaking to me about deep healing work, which can be very scary. The 9 of Pentacles is also showing up sort of before that, which tells me that you have the strength to move through these things, whatever they are, however painful they are. And this up here may have been a huge distraction for really facing the underlying issues that have to do with self-worth, self-confidence, powerlessness, neglect, fear of neglect, all of these kinds of things. The 9 of Pentacles showing up here in the deep end means that you're more than capable, as scary as sometimes this healing work can seem, of facing your own depths. You have everything you need to move forward. It's just about really, for some of you, I think it's about completing this process, because I do think you've been on a journey. You've been, this Rider card, like this Rider has been sort of en route for a while. You have been learning or growing, but there's just sort of like the end, like completing, last touches here, and it has to, oops, I'm sorry, I just completely knocked you. It just has to do with allowing things to fall away, allowing death and change to happen, which is painful and difficult. I'm not going to say otherwise, but you have this strength. You've been gathering strength by doing this healing work and diving deep. You have become this 9 of Pentacles. Don't be afraid. Just want to add that. Don't be afraid. I think I've said what I wanted to say here. I think, let me just have another look at this card, because these cards are so incredibly detailed, like the artwork here. I would just say that you are very, very, very supported in this healing work, in whatever you're doing. There's a lot of energy around you that is wanting to sort of you to grow and wanting to help. There is a baby here, which is just sort of telling me that whatever this healing work is, it's very deeply rooted. Some of you may, you know, whether there's sort of whatever it is that you're maybe exploring in healing, like maybe hypnosis or just delving into the subconscious, there is something about going back to the very beginning of your life and sort of retracing your steps and really doing some kind of deep healing and deep nourishing work here. In order to sort of free yourself from these old patterns. But you are very, very supported. Know that. You are very protected and very supported in doing this work. And I think it will be very, very successful. I do. But it just requires change and endings as well. I hope this was resonated with some of you out there. If it did, do leave me a comment. I'd love to hear from you guys and how you're experiencing these readings, and also leave me if you're interested in different kinds of readings or you have ideas about things that you'd like to see. Do share your thoughts with me. I'd love to hear from you, and I look forward to reading for you next time. Bye, Pile 3s. Hi, Pile 4, and welcome to your reading. You picked the Peacock Ore, and today we are asking all about your love karma. So, lessons in love, old patterns and cycles. If you found yourself caught in sort of recurring, having similar kinds of experiences, loops in romantic relationships in the realm of romance, we're looking for insight into perhaps the roots of those issues and how you might positively move forward and overcome those things, basically. So of course, Pile 4, this is a very general read. Take only what feels like it's meant for you, leave what doesn't. Of course, you know your own life, you know best. Always go with your own instinct and always exercise discernment. The intention of the reading is to bring clarity and guidance to you. It is not to confuse you. It's also, hopefully that you guys feel seen in whatever it is that you're going through and know that you're not alone in it, really. So we have the Six of Wands here at the head of the read. We have Seeker in reverse. We have Temperance, the Hermit. We have the Magician, the Hierophant, and the High Priestess. Interesting to see those two come out together. We have Castles in the Clouds. We have the Comic. We have Anima in reverse, and we have Ship here in the mini Lenormand. Okay, let me just check the frame here so you guys can see everything. Let's shuffle a little bit in this direction so you can see this card a little bit more, I think. I don't want you to miss out on these incredible cards. And then we'll get into it. Pile 4. So we have the Six of Wands here at the head of your reading. And the Six of Wands is, usually it's a card of victory, right? It's a card of celebration, of being recognized. And, it's the returning, soldier on his victory lap, right? But this is such an interesting depiction because it's like one of those Olympian, or at least I'm seeing it. I don't know which Olympic sport it is where they sort of backflip over like a little barricade. I don't know what it's called. But it's interesting because the Six of Wands character is sort of upside down and sort of in reverse, whereas usually it's sort of someone that's sort of having their head held high, and here like their head, they're sort of like falling, which is so interesting, right? For the Six of Wands, it's sort of, sort of the opposite of that sensation of being seen. It makes me feel like Pile 4, some of you, of course this can always be an energy that's around you, right? That I'm picking up on. You might have really been very ambitious in certain areas of life, let's say, in your career. You may have been very goal-oriented and wanting to, setting your sights very high, being very achievement-focused. But either way, like, it's as if the Six of Wands is all about being seen by the outside world, right? And this is a love read. We're talking about relationships and love karma, which is an intimate, private thing, right? In general, we experience love in a, intimate, behind closed doors, really. And the Six of Wands is about public recognition. So it's interesting that this is the card that is sort of at the head of this read, and it makes me feel as if a couple of things that you perhaps have felt, pile 4, as if it was necessary for you to prove yourself in some way in order to be worthy of love, that you had to reach a certain kind of standard in life that was very publicly validated or externally validated and undeniable in order to be a desirable partner, a wanted partner. It's like there's something here that perhaps you felt that you had to prove, and that may be rooted in perhaps being, being told that you weren't enough. You may have had a parent or just an environment in your early life that was very pressure filled and received a lot of messages about having to step up and having to, yes, be enough in some ways if who you were wasn't enough. And like these, I wish I knew the name of these sports. I wasn't watching the Olympics recently, but when they're like, I kind of want to look it up, but it'll break my chain here. When they have those kind of like things you leap over, and then there's the higher ones, and the higher ones. What is it called? I can't remember, but it's as if sort of who you are is not enough. What you are, what you have, right? All of these kind of ego pursuits of having to sort of prove yourself. I'm not saying that it's not all right to have dreams and ambitions. Of course it is, but the trouble is oftentimes they don't sort of fill us up or perhaps fulfill us and bring us the peace that maybe we expect of them, right? Because all of those things have to do with internal work. And I think there's confusion here, right? I think maybe you're learning that lesson in some way or the other, that who you are at any given moment, whether you're employed, whether you're not, whether things are going well, whether your life on paper just doesn't look the way that you would have hoped, to learn to recognize yourself as enough, whatever you have, right? So whether other people are recognizing you or not, this is a really, really challenging thing. But I think for those of you that pick this pile 4, it's like these are deep-rooted things. And I do think they may be subconscious. Maybe you're very well aware and conscious of being exposed to certain things, certain pressures as a young person. But you may be unaware of the extent of the unconscious patterning that this may have caused and the blockages that it may have caused in terms of behavior in relationships, and also just pursuing relationships or feeling like you are enough. To attract and maintain what you want, essentially, to feel like that you're sort of deserving of love. So this is some quite heavy stuff I'm getting from the Six of Wands, but let's move on to this Seeker here. This is so interesting because although this is in reverse, it's sort of, you can look at it two ways, because upright we have this, I think, more feminine figure. And there's a more masculine, is it? Yeah, there's a more masculine figure sort of on the other side. This is interesting because we also have the anima in reverse. Can't help but notice here, down here we have the anima. So that's sort of the Jungian inner feminine, right? The sort of the feminine side, the yin side. Curious. Yeah. There is clearly a sort of balance here when it comes to femininity. I feel like I was picking this up. Was it in this? I've been doing a lot of readings, guys. My channel is still very new, but I've been doing a lot of readings, and after a point it does get, and obviously you get into a very interesting sort of flow when doing these channelings, so it's hard for me to remember exactly when certain readings were at times, but there does seem to be a struggle here with integrating the inner feminine. And we have Seeker here, so it's almost as if some kind of work seeking, exploration, digging deep hasn't happened. And the masculine is a very kind of external, the anima. This is the anima. Yeah, sorry, I mean the animus. The animus, the masculine, is the very external principle, the active external principle, which the Six of Wands, public recognition, what can be seen. It's like there's been some kind of neglect of the feminine, of the anima, of the inner and private work. And of course, this is the work that, if we don't do this work, the realm of love and relationships is going to be a minefield for us. If perhaps we are very successful in the outside world, that also may be the case. In some cases, perhaps there was, you face struggles because you haven't succeeded in the way that you perhaps wanted to, and that's limited your confidence and your ability to feel comfortable in relationships or even pursuing relationships. On the other hand, you may have entirely focused on this kind of external, very active aspects of your identity and your life at the, to the detriment of the kind of more passive, psychological, the inner work, basically, the internal, the feminine. And the Temperance card is a card that speaks to that blending, right? It's a coming together of yin or yang, yin and yang. It's a coming together of opposing different forces, right? And interestingly, on the Fountain deck, there is a more masculine, or at least it looks masculine to me. And of course, when I'm speaking about masculine, feminine, these are principles. This is a duality that exists in all of us, regardless of biological gender or identification. Just want to clarify that. But this figure is unusual on a depiction of the Temperance card, right? Which is usually a female, an angel, something like that. But we have quite a masculine figure that sort of looks kind of naked in the water, right? I do think if you're identifying with this pile, if this is ringing certain bells inside of you, then these are things that you are aware of. I don't think this is news to you. I think these are things that you have started to understand about yourself, and you may have even started to understand the roots of those patterns. And I think you're coming into willingness, or you will be, I think, Pile 4, a willingness to explore your vulnerability. The way this person is sort of naked in water, and water is all about our depth, right? Our emotions, all of these internal things that we're speaking about, the imbalance of feminine. This person is in the water. This person is looking at this fusion of yin and yang, right? So if you're not already there, I think you perhaps are going through changes, Pile 4, in which you are getting there and having to really look at this. Because there's been an imbalance here that has caused blockages, like things have not been going the way that you might have wished. There is recognition and understanding, though, that there are parts of sort of patterns of behavior and also your way of seeing things that may have blocked things that you wanted. It's coming in, right? So we have castles in the clouds. And I know this is kind of an expression that sort of building castles in the clouds. It's an expression people use to sort of kind of poo-poo other people's dreams, right? Saying things are unrealistic. But also the meaning in this deck, like the Tantric Dakini Oracle is what it's called, is that, like, well, who gets to decide really whose dreams are valid and what is achievable and what isn't? Perhaps we should all be dreaming bigger and we should all be less cynical about people's dreams, right? I am feeling that for a lot of you, a couple of different things. One, that I think because of certain struggles, inner struggles with this balance, and often just struggles with your emotional, more feminine side, may have created blockages, and at times you've been perhaps more comfortable with the fantasy of a thing than the reality of the thing. So getting lost in the dream of a person and the potential, building a little dream of what life might be with them, where you can be safe and you can experience. Because when we fantasize, when we build like a story in our head, I do believe that we experience some kind of like small chemical reward, not in the way that we would if these things were actually happening. And for instance, we get a boost of happy chemicals if we're in love, but just imagination is incredibly powerful. That's why we daydream, right? So we can have a sort of perhaps a watered down version of the real experience. Of course it's not like the real experience, but there's the reason we do it is that we do get a little dopamine hit if we're able to convince ourselves, build a convincing daydream. The same way as in reverse, that a negative fantasy can then trigger frightening, stressful, like cortisol or whatever, stress hormones. So you, Pile 4, you may have been sort of comfortable in the realm of your career or things like that, or just comfortable in more kind of the active outside world, public realms, and experienced fears about intimacy. And as much as you may have wanted a close and intimate relationship, you may have felt just far more comfortable in dreaming the fantasy of one than actually opening yourself up and to being with someone. Because I think perhaps whether you are consciously or unconsciously aware of not having really dealt with that side of yourself, which I think is something that you are or will be doing. Pile 4. There's a variety of ways we can sort of, sometimes sort of having crushes on people that are ultimately unattainable. And you may say to yourself, why do I always fall for the wrong person? Like, the person's always unavailable, or they're just like, they're just the wrong match for me, right? It may be that you unconsciously are sort of orchestrating these situations in order to sort of live for a time at least in the fantasy of the thing, to avoid the challenges, the fears of actually opening up to someone that may be an appropriate partner for you, essentially. So we have the Hermit, which is a card of solitude. So regardless, and some of you may have had relationships with people that perhaps were more superficial, or perhaps didn't demand you to really open up your heart and things like that, because that may have been very frightening for you, Pile 4, very intimidating. We have the Hermit here, which is a card of solitude. It's a card of going your own way. It's also a card of doing the inner work, right? It's looking at yourself in a very deep way, exploring your own psyche, finding the truth within, becoming still with yourself, which is very similar to what I was feeling was happening with this Temperance card. If these things have created blockages, and if you're still feeling blocked by them, know that there is energy around you that is pulling you almost within to kind of examine these things, why they're there, why perhaps you haven't experienced the luck, if we want to call it luck. I don't think it's about luck in the end, really. It's sort of we make our own experiences in the end, particularly in this sort of realm of relationships. Of course, we can't control who walks in the door, but these patterns, I think, are not by accident. I think, Pile 4, you're very much in a stage of going within, and knowing that you have to make certain adjustments, corrections, just getting comfortable with dealing with your own emotions and feeling your own emotions before you're able to really come together with someone else. But I think there is a real desire. I think that candle just went out. Sorry about that. I don't know if there's some kind of deep meaning there, but you may want to come together with someone, but also be acknowledging the fact that you're not going to get to the place that you want to go unless you pause and do some work. And I think that's very accurate. We do have the Magician here, and this is a very serious looking magician, right? Like, he's really he almost seems like somebody very hungry that's just sitting down at a table and waiting for their meal and is sort of demanding their meal. I said hungry, and I think that maybe you do have a hunger or a deep, deep desire for an emotionally nourishing bond, like a longing for it. You may have been caught in these cycles for just for some of you years, for a long, long time, and maybe you've never really felt that kind of deep emotional connection. And there's a longing there. And there's a longing here. The kind of focus of this magician is to get something right. You may have felt you have gotten a lot wrong, or you've missed opportunities, or you've blown opportunities, or you've wasted time, things like that, on the wrong people. there's this kind of determined focus on this magician's face that they are determined to get it right this time. They're determined not to follow the same paths, and this is what this reading is all about, like how not to get stuck in these karmic loops, right? How to break out of them, move on, have more meaningful experiences. And I think that's where you are, or that's where you're going to be arriving soon enough, I think, Pile 4. But there's a real determination here to do this self-examination, and sometimes it runs really deep, like I said. Sometimes it runs into our sort of shadow, our subconscious space, our childhood experiences. But I think you're going to go there. I think this magician has their eyes shut, and he's just like, some of you may really, when I first saw this image, I thought he was about to kind of write to someone too, like there's not a pen there, but some of you may want to reach out to someone. That's coming through to me too. And there's a determination to do that the right way, to put something right. But you may find yourself that you've been falling into these old patterns of fantasies, of being more comfortable in a fantasy than the reality of that thing. And that a fantasy relationship is just, yes, it gives you that kind of time out and that the pleasure of your daydream, and especially if life is otherwise stressful. But I think this magician is sort of determined to move past these cycles, quite determined. But there's this real focus on getting something right, and I'm not quite sure what that is. Again, it may be a pressure that you put on yourself, Pile 4. That came through clearly. This fierce inner critic, or it's like an inner almost authoritarian of fearing the world will punish you if you take a misstep, something like that. Again, these may be very, very deep-rooted cycles which cannot be fixed necessarily overnight, but they can, of course, be overcome with, they can be healed with doing that inner work, with really looking within. This Hierophant here, I do think, and the Hierophant often is a card of institutional religion, right? Institutions in general. So it's also a card of higher learning, for instance, moral codes, things like that. But the feeling I'm getting, and we have it right here, right next to the High Priestess. Something about his hands is reminding me of the Buddha as well, which of course Buddhism is an organized religion. Some of you may have been exploring certain kinds of faiths. It doesn't have to be Christianity or Buddhism or anything, but it doesn't have to be an organized religion. But this Hierophant is sort of really speaking to me about there's definitely a feeling of being kind of slightly led astray by your own, let's say, ambition, ego, things like that. Or those things blocking you in ways that you now feel are perhaps more meaningful to you. Perhaps you're seeing perhaps the things that you were maybe pursuing in the past are not so meaning for you at this point in time. And something that's really perhaps changed or is changing for you, Pile 4, is an interest in, or not an interest, it has to do with faith. It has to do with your belief system. So perhaps you've always had some kind of relationship to some kind of religion or spirituality. But I just feel like it's deepened recently. It's just suddenly become very important to you. Yeah, very important to you. In a way that it wasn't before. Maybe you were just before you were sort of just quite agnostic, or you weren't closed-minded and you weren't sort of an atheist, or you didn't shut down certain ideas, but neither were you sort of having any kind of daily practice based around, some kind of spiritual belief. And you may not be doing that now, but there's something coming through to me about seeing almost the bigger picture in terms of basically having faith. Something has shifted here, and it's perhaps more to do with, perhaps you have had disappointments and you've been recognizing patterns, but all of these things have really been catalysts for you, Pile 4, to open up your heart, which you've struggled with. And that has sort of led you to sort of connect with something higher, and perhaps you don't quite know yet how to define that, and you don't have to either. That everyone, I think faith is a very personal thing, and we can believe what we want to believe, right? But yeah, what's coming through to me is just this feeling of there's a key down here too. It's like, this may have been unexpected also, but it's something that you can't look away from now that you've seen it. It's like a door that's been opened for you, and it's sort of changing the way you're seeing everything. But it's also very, very positive and very meaningful to you. So if you've just touched sort of the edge of something, I do think that it's something that you want to explore more. And it actually seems to be becoming, perhaps for some of you, the most important focus you have in your life, which doesn't mean you're going to drop everything else. If, particularly, for instance, if you have a successful career, it's not like, I'm not sensing that you're going to kind of run away to kind of be a monk or live in an ashram or something like that. Although, do that if you feel like doing that, part 4. But it's less about the sort of daily practice, right? But the way our faith colors the way everything looks to us, the way our beliefs, and believing that there's something more than our immediate, what our immediate senses are telling us. If we have faith, that changes everything. It changes everything, and I do think this is beautiful, and it wasn't what I was expecting. This, as I started this read, this wasn't what I was expecting, but it's coming through to me so strongly, which also, again, it isn't usually what the Hierophant is necessarily conveys to me. But we have this right next to the High Priestess, and interestingly, because we were also talking about anima animus, right? Yin and yang, the feminine, the masculine principle, and we have the Hierophant coming out right next to the High Priestess, and they kind of are these sort of feminine, masculine. We also have the Magician. We just have some strong kind of masculine, feminine energies that sort of represent higher knowledge, spirituality, religion, all of those things. Like, it's very strong here. And how you root this with the Magician, like, how do you root this mystery and knowing and all of the higher realms? Like, how do you bring this to the earth? That's what the Magician does. They use their tools to sort of create magic out of this kind of higher knowledge and bring it to the sort of the earthly realm. The High Priestess, yeah. Like, I do think some of you have had, whether you're male or female again, some kind of recognition of another person, or there may have been something in the realm of love and relationships that has been this catalyst for recognizing old patterns, recognizing a lack of integration within your own psyche, emotional body that has to do with this imbalance between masculine and feminine, but also this larger thing of introducing you to a larger world, or almost triggering this an inner, like, because it's always there, right? It's something for you, Pal 4, that perhaps you've always had certain beliefs or thoughts or feelings or sensations. Perhaps you've even had certain kind of intuitive and psychic experiences, but maybe you just didn't want to look at it. So of course you have to pay attention to these things and honor them and respect them for them to sort of grow, right? I went through this when I was younger. I always had weird sort of psychic experiences and I did not want them for a long time. Like, I was like, no. Every time I was quite a kind of not scientific materialist like thinking person, but I was very rational. I was raised in that way. And as soon as I taught myself to meditate, that really, really changed. That really changed for me. Pile 4, I'm sorry about that jump. I was cut off just as I was talking about psychic ability. I was speaking about my own experiences in learning to meditate and finding that whenever I sat down to meditate, interesting things I would have weird insights, and I would have a sense of things that were going to happen. I would feel like I could feel other people's feelings, things like that. And I wasn't going to meditation classes, and I wasn't part of any kind of community that could have guided me through that. So I was quite freaked out by it and I rejected it. My response was to think, oh, this is crazy, and to sort of try and stuff those things back in the box they came in, really. It was too confusing for me. And I was too surrounded by people that were also very kind of rationally minded, or very kind of more oriented around the intellect and things like that. However, like over time, like for instance, I'd had insights about things that would happen, and those things sort of came to be true, like, and I still tried to kind of deny these things about me for a long time before I embraced them. It's just sort of a part of who I am, and perhaps Pal 4, like, you're experiencing something similar in one way or the other, just a sense or kind of remembrance about, you know, who you really are in this world, which is a beautiful thing. And I think almost a sort of inevitable thing. Like, we can look away and we can do all the other things that we do in general to avoid our own depths, our private experience, our wounds, our fears, and all of those things we don't want to look at, you know, by distracting ourselves and turning our focus to the outside world. So we don't have to sort of sit in our own quiet because we don't know what will come up. I think, you know, this will look different for each of you that are connecting with this, but I do think strongly there's just a deep sense of knowing that's coming to the fore for you, Pal 4, that you can't pretend isn't happening for you, you know? Because with the Hierophant and the High Priestess, it's like, yeah, perhaps you're learning to engage and read your own intuition for the first time. Perhaps it's always been there, but it's been quiet, and now it's getting loud for whatever reason. And again, yeah, I was thinking that this is something that sort of was catalyzed by somebody else in some cases, or in some cases there is an animus counterpart thing going on, whether you are identifying as the feminine or masculine side of that equation. Because we do have the High Priestess here, and the way these two moons, we have two crescent moons here, look, that are sort of facing away from each other. Like, for some of you may feel that you have sort of encountered your other half, or you've had an experience with someone else that has sort of essentially awakened you, and it's sort of, in that awakening, you've been kind of shaken out of your usual way of being and seeing things, but also out of these old karmic patterns in love, because yes, it may have been a very romantic connection that has come into your life, or it's perhaps you're seeing something old anew, something like that. It may have been something that you have rejected in the past, because we have anima in reverse. Some of you, this won't be for all, because this card in the archetype deck, I feel it's like some people have funny feelings about this card, because it is a weird card. Like, look at this cat. Like, it is a little bit freaky. I don't mind it personally, but it does seem to freak some people out. What's coming through to me with this comic card is sort of, because it's not about, so for me it's not about the comic or the idea of playfulness, but rather the way that I think this is the Kim Krans deck, so who designed this deck, there's this cat face and there's another face under, like, the cat is a mask, right? There's some kind of, there was something here about public image, like feeling like you have to put on one face to the public and then not really overly identifying with that public or ego self, right? At the expense of a private self. But this may be a way that you've looked at yourself, and it may be the way that you've also looked at a kind of counterpart, whether they are male or female, is confusion about identity. So maybe you didn't see this person as they were, or were confused, or you projected fears. There's castles in the clouds, which we spoke about in a very positive sense, right? Positive fantasies, but then we can also build false projections and fearful, what's the opposite of a daydream? A nightmare? Like a daymare? Just sort of like difficult, like painful delusion, yeah, a delusion. It's perhaps, yeah, I think it may be applies to the way that you see yourself or identified with a certain projection of yourself based on other people's expectations, but it may also apply to the way you may have seen someone else, projecting those same surface things. So seeing only the surface of someone's behavior and not looking deeper and not putting in the effort to learn or to understand what was really going on with someone. I'm feeling like you may have observed someone or be interacted with someone and just sort of looked very much just like at the surface of that person's behavior without acknowledging that there's layers to all of us. There's mystery to all of us. There's a lot that's unsaid and unspoken, and we don't know what people are going through at any given time, and we interpret it based on our own fears, our own expectations, our own projections. That's what we're all doing all the time. It's difficult at times to see through these things, but I think we can acknowledge, right, that we don't know necessarily what other people are going through. I think you are coming to some kind of realization, because there's definitely a two-sided thing here. Like, this involves someone else for most of you. Yeah. And there's just this real awareness, and I think for some of you, we have anima in reverse. The anima is also in reverse, that in the Seeker card, so it's reintegrating the feminine, and part of that is reconsidering how you view the feminine in yourself and others. Like, for some of you it may be the masculine, for some of you it may be the animus, the inner masculine. That's that image of what masculinity has become distorted or poorly integrated. But I think in most cases I was really feeling, look, you can be very, very female identified but still be sort of almost masculine heavy. Like, that's completely possible. So that doesn't matter, but I was feeling that it's mostly a struggle to integrate the more passive and feminine side. And in many cases here, I think for someone there's an actual person that is sort of like represents that to you, like represents that idea of the anima, the femininity. And there's been some kind of misunderstanding, judgment, false projection there, which you're understanding, and you're trying to integrate these things. You're trying to turn these cards upright, because we have the Seeker here, which is about gaining knowledge, right? There's a lot of unknowns about this experience for you, but you're getting it, though. You are getting this. I always say in these readings, like, there's a curve, there's an arc that I'm describing, a storyline, and some of you may feel that you're behind or ahead of that curve in different places, like depending on when you come across this reading. But we are ending here with the Ship, which is a card of movement, of travel. It has the 10 there. This is funny. For those of you that have some connection to Great Britain or London, I saw this as the top of Big Ben, which it's a boat. It's clearly a boat, but it's like, I think most of my viewers are, in fact, I am currently in the UK, but I think most of my viewers are based on what YouTube tells me in the United States, but there's something here about, I was seeing this as Big Ben, the top of Big Ben broken off. So you don't have to be living in the United Kingdom, but it's like Big Ben, of course, is about time. Big Ben is a big clock. Yeah, for those of you that don't know, those in the UK, I think pretty much everyone knows what Big Ben is, right? But if you don't, Big Ben is the big clock face that is part of the Parliamentary building in London. I could interpret that in so many ways. What I was feeling is sort of almost as if at the top of it had been broken off and been cast into water. I do think some of you want to leave, like, it has to do with being rooted in location. It's a landmark, right? So about leaving certain things behind and breaking down certain structures, very old, very solid structures. That's what Big Ben is. Whatever your Big Ben is, pile 4. Leaving behind perhaps what is familiar and old and known, and going in a different direction. This is the ship card. You're going somewhere, and that requires perhaps breaking down something. And with the Six of Wands, yeah, perhaps you've accrued certain successes. It will mean something different for each of you, but there's so much movement happening here. This is not, it is sort of almost about reclaiming your passive side, but at the same time, you're moving very quickly in doing that. Like, there's a lot of motion here, and a lot of stillness and beauty and passive energy with the Hierophant and this High Priestess. And this Magician is quite a passive magician. The Magician is usually very active, right? But this is an interesting card to end on because it's about moving towards things, and it's a number 10 card, which is a culmination, right? So there's a sense that happiness is possible and within reach if this integration process here, the bringing together of the masculine and feminine, can be complete. This was so interesting, and I would love to keep going, but I think this is by far probably the longest read of this sequence. I think I will be, in my future reads, maybe looking at doing some extended readings. It's hard to plan for it because sometimes you have an expectation of a read going deep and it doesn't. And then sometimes reads like this, I could go on, I feel like, for another half hour or more. But I hadn't intended to do that. But I am planning with this channel as it grows, hopefully. And if you want to help it grow, then yeah, just like, subscribe, all the usual stuff, really. Leave me a comment, let me know if you connected to this. All of that stuff really helps me to kind of build it. And so we'll be looking at doing extended readings because it's interesting to go deep, right? And hopefully it gives you more guidance if you're feeling like, yeah, this is really me and it's confusing. But those of you that play this part, I think you know what's up and you know what's happening here, and I think you're in your stride. I do think that you're not drowning in these waters. Like, you've found a kind of home in these waters. You've sort of come home, and I do think there's a lot of clarity that you've come into and are coming into. Like I said, I feel like I could just keep going with this, but I won't. It would be unfair to the other groups to see how much longer this is. But yeah, let me wrap this up. It was a pleasure to read for you, Pal 4, and I look forward to reading for you again in future. Bye.